In this video, we're going to review some of the evaluation designs we can use to assess the effectiveness of any training program or development opportunity. The post-test only design involves a single measurement from the training group at the end of training. It can tell us whether minimum qualifications have been met, but it can't tell us whether a change occurred, a change in knowledge, a change in skill, a change in some behavior. It is the simplest evaluation design and requires the least number of resources. However, it produces the least valuable information. This option might be useful when the budget is small or the training program is more developmental than strategic, but there are plenty of other better options. The pre-test, post-test design involves two measurements from the training group, one before training and one after training. For each learner, we can compare their two sets of scores. We can use t-tests and other tests of significance to determine whether differences between pre-training scores and post-training scores are statistically significant and therefore indicative of a real change in some KSAO. However, without a control group, we can't be sure that the training program we are evaluating was the cause of this change. An increase in productivity, for example, might have been caused by a change in management, not the training program. This third design involves only a post-test, but includes a comparison group. Again, there are two measurements taken, one from the training group and one from a comparison group who did not participate in the training. It is very important that employees be randomly assigned to either the training group or the comparison group. After the measurements are taken, the comparison group can then participate in the training so that no one is left out. This time, we determine whether change occurred by comparing the post-test scores of the training group and the post-test scores of the comparison group. It isn't a perfect comparison, but we can draw some conclusions, assuming the two groups were similar to begin with. This design also tells us whether training is a probable cause of any significant changes we find. The use of a control group helps us isolate the effects of training versus the effects of some other event or factor that was also present at the time of training. The next design involves 4 measurements. Before the training intervention, both the training group and the comparison group are measured. Both groups are then measured once more after the training group completes the training. We start by looking for changes between the training group's pre-training scores and post-training scores to determine whether change occurred for the training group. Then we compare the two groups' pre-training scores. If they're similar, and they should be if we used random assignment, we can move forward with our analysis. If they are different, we can't determine whether training was the cause of any post changes we identify. It could be that the two groups were different to begin with. Finally, we compare the two groups' post-training scores. If the training group experienced significantly greater change than the comparison group, we might have evidence that the training was the cause of the change. If both groups experienced the same amount of change, another factor other than training likely caused it. The Solomon 4-group design is one of the gold standards in training evaluation. It combines two of the designs that we've already learned about, the post-test only with comparison group design and the pre-test post-test with comparison group design. This method requires 4 groups, 2 training groups, and 2 comparison groups, which means it requires a lot of resources. In exchange for the time and money it takes to implement this complex design, we can be more sure, more confident that the results, whatever they are reliable and valid. This design can assess whether change occurred and whether training caused it. Let's take a quick look at the 4 groups included in this design. The first group is the first training group, and they complete both a pre-test and a post-test. The second group is the first comparison group. They complete both the pre-test and the post-test as well. The third group is the second training group, who only take the post-test. The fourth group is the second comparison group, who only takes the post-test. These 4 groups allow us to make all kinds of comparisons to determine and validate training effects. The final evaluation design that we are going to cover is called the time series design. Not only can it assess whether change occurred and whether training caused it, it can also assess the stability of training effects over time. For how long do the benefits of training last? A few weeks, months, or years? This design collects multiple measurements, both before and after training. So, we would have multiple pre-training scores and multiple post-training scores for each learner. We can improve the strengths of this design by adding a control group and by collecting measures during time periods when trainees do not receive training or boosters. Generally speaking, designs with more controls require more resources, but they are better. Every organization should have an evaluation budget, which will have a significant impact on the decisions we make about the design.